Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to lesson. It's actually number 5. It's wonderful that we keep studying. We are holding in the middle of page 40. I just want to give a very short summary of what we've studied so far in chapter 1, and then if you have any questions, because it's not fair to move on if things are unclear. What we've discovered is that aside from the questions about making a person take an oath before he's born, we have discovered that there are 5 categories of spiritual people. 2 of righteous, complete righteous, incomplete righteous, or righteous who is enjoying, and a righteous that suffers. 2 wicked people, a wicked person who enjoys life, or wicked people who suffers, or a complete righteous wicked and incomplete wicked. And then the middle one is called a Benoni, a middleman, a person who is right in the middle. The rabbi asked a simple question, and the rabbi asked from different angles the same question. What kind of a person is a Benoni? A Benoni seems, as I tally the class, is someone who is half and half. Usually you would think that a righteous man is someone whose most of his behavior is good, and wicked man is a person whose most behavior is evil, is bad, and a Benoni is someone who half the time he does good, half the time he doesn't do good. Says the Rabbi that it doesn't make sense for a simple reason. By Jewish law, anytime a person commits a sin, they have separated themselves from God. A mitzvah is a connection to God. A sin is called chet in Hebrew. It means separating yourself, creating a curtain or cutting off the channel between me and God. Ali, you can. Therefore, as soon as a man refrains from doing a mitzvah and is involved in doing a sin, he becomes a wicked person. Therefore, it's impossible for a Benoni in real life. In addition, we have the rabbi is attacking the same idea from other angles. We have Rabbi, a very famous man who the angel of death could not control him and had to trick him down, meaning that he was pure righteous man. He says to his disciples, I am an example of a Benoni. How is it possible for someone who had not sinned and has been to such a high level where the angel of death could not take care of him, yet he says, I'm a Benoni? The rabbi goes on in details. That's where we concluded last time, where it's not only one sin is considered someone a wicked person, but also missing a positive commandment. God says, pray Shema at night. And we forgot, we did not transgress, but yet it is considered a sin. Also, if someone had not protested when others sinned, he is called a wicked man. So even if I did nothing wrong, the fact that I did not do something or say something when someone misbehaves makes me a wicked man. So where do you have a Benoni? Therefore, and I believe that's where we concluded last time, Rabbi could have mistaken himself to call himself a Benoni simply because a Benoni must be a man who had never sinned, a man who do not transgress any of God's commandments. Because as soon as someone transgresses God's commandments, he has cut himself away from God and he is deemed a wicked man. Now that we understand that a Benoni is not someone who is half and half, a man that does not even have one sin, he does not waste 1 minute of his day without studying Torah, we can understand why Rabbi said I am an example of a Benoni. He made a mistake, but the mistake was because in action, a perfect man and a Benoni are equally the same. You will not have any difference. They both serve God, they both obey God, and they never transgress not a single sin. That's where we finished until now. Any questions?
Yes, so if you have a Benoni who sins, you come to Russia.
There is no Benoni or a tzaddik who sins. A human, a person. What? Or, well, that's the discussion we're going to get to. Very good. Good point.
You sin, and you say Russia.
As one sin, yes.
You say Russia. Now, the rest of your life, you never sin again. You still a Russian, you sin back in.
Very good point. This is a point of contention about, because according to the Talmud, a Benoni is someone who had never sinned in his life. And as Harry said, if someone failed once, he will never be in the category of a Benoni. The Rabbi explained, just a minute, the Rabbi explained that in his current state, he is so connected to God that a sin is out of the question. It will retroactively clean his past. This is a very powerful point that we need to understand, that in Judaism, you do not carry baggage. There are so many lessons. Last time I shared with you about people who are born with certain traits, and we spoke about nobody is perfect, and being a tzaddik is unattainable, right? We spoke about Job. The Job said, God, you created wicked, you created righteous. Anybody remembers that? Meaning being a righteous man is someone only when God gifted someone, but to on our own, it's impossible. Yet the demand is for us to conduct ourselves in action without failing once. Now we're learning another idea, and that is, in Judaism, if I today am so perfect in my way, in my heart and in my action, it will affect retroactively my past. And therefore, my past is corrected to a perfect point of view. Let me just conclude. That's why in conversion, someone who converts to Judaism, we call it ger shenitgayer, a convert who converted to Judaism. We don't say goy shenitgayer, a Gentile who converted. Because when someone converted, it affects them retroactively from the moment they are born. In other words, we will stick to this, to our topic only today. I'm just bringing those ideas because it's important for you to get and realize how profound the lessons of Tanya. If I have sinned because I knew nothing better, or I sinned because I had a very strong evil inclination, the fact that one day I wake up and say, I will try my best and I'm going to make myself as good as possible, that will erase the past. And by the way, that is what Rosh Hashanah is about, or Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the day after, we are called tzaddikim. We are all perfect. As soon as we sin, we fail. But up to that point, everything is erased. And there is one more point. I kept forgetting, you getting me distracted about this effect about testimony. A witness cannot be a wicked man. Anybody knows that for testimonial, someone to serve as a witness at a wedding, to swear, to take an oath in court, unless they are righteous. If so, it will disqualify majority of the people. And the answer is before they testify, the court says to them, please ask God forgiveness and have that in mind. We need to find an honest man who in earnesty do not sin openly. Then these people are not relied upon when it comes to testimony in court. In other words, at that moment, they become perfect. And there was another point that I wanted to share that I just got distracted. Harry, go ahead. Right. But we are called tzaddikim. Did you know that the next day after Yom Kippur, we do not say tachanun, we do not say confession? You know why? Because you have nothing to confess.
So I asked the question, you finish Yom Kippur, we got married, why do you say Sachar on the family? We haven't said it.
It's a very good question.
And I forget what my father said to me.
What did he say?
You have fast, is that right? You should forgive, you should ask God to forgive you for davening so fast, you want to go home and eat.
The Hasidic answer, this is a very good answer. But the Hasidic, I don't know, I'm not sure if everybody can follow. The Hasidic, Harry is asking if on Yom Kippur we're all perfect. How come at the conclusion of Yom Kippur, after the shofar blow and everybody is there on the height of the righteousness, we ask God for atonement. In the Amidah, we say, Slach lanu, please forgive us. The Hasidic answer is to remind us that in the level of connecting to God, there is no end. You never reach a dead end. So therefore, today's behavior requires repentance tomorrow, because tomorrow you need to do better. Did you understand that? It's a Chabad. That's the only answer I have. It's besides it's a question about confession. And at night you don't say confession. So it's not really asking forgiveness. In addition, you see that by day you don't say tachnun, but you say slach lanu. So it's not really confession. You understand that? Herman, you had a question about the Benoni. Does that explain, or you still need clarification?
I'm still confused.
All right.
The reason for the confusion is another Chabad rabbi that I listened to on Tuesday evening. He's from Caracas, maybe his Spanish and not that good. But what it is, he refers to Benoim all the time, making me believe there are plenty of Benoim. And thereby, your explanation is, if I understand you correctly, there's no Benoim. Or
All right.
no-
So there are a few points that I want to clarify. Go ahead, finish.
Is there a Benoim in the current atmosphere that we're present? Are they Benoim or they're not?
All right. So the answer is that you're correct. There are plenty of Beinonim, as we'll discover later. In addition, the word Beinoni can be applied to something else, as we're about to discover. Hopefully, we'll get there today. So that person refers to a different type of Beinoni. Okay. But right now, let's stick to this. And besides, it's always good to stick to one rabbi.
This is Rabbi from Caracas said.
Did you hear me? I stick to it. It only leads to confusion.
I can see that.
Elizabeth agrees with me.
He always does.
So we will go back now. By the way, by the time we're done with chapter 1, you will see that those questions are totally gone. Okay, just like Sheila is bringing also many points, and some of it is touching about Sheila's last time she was talking about it, about a tzaddik, if it's possible to be a tzaddik. Again, this is very important for me that you get the point, and that is, a Beinoni must be someone who had not sinned. As soon as someone transgresses once, they are in the category of wicked, because the Talmud tells us that sin separates, create a curtain between us and God. And therefore, that's what a wicked person is. A wicked person may not be evil, may not be bad. A wicked person in Jewish law, tradition, is someone who is separated from God. And therefore, the category of Beinoni cannot be in action. A Beinoni, as soon as he's exited the level of wicked, it means that in action, he is perfectly the same as a tzaddik, as a righteous man. They both will only obey God, will never waste time, will never see someone misbehave and keep quiet. They'll always serve God. Now we need to clarify many points, and one of them is, what's the difference between a Beinoni and a Tzaddik? Number two is, how does everyone can attain the level of Beinoni? And that's where we're going to go to. I am reading on page 41, second paragraph. This being so, we must conclude that the Beinoni is not guilty even of the sin of neglecting to study Torah, and it is a sin that no man is exempt. That's what the Talmud tells us. No one is exempt of three sins. I'm going to show only two. I'm not going to show the third one. One is the neglect of studying Torah, and the other is gossiping. Everyone is involved to one degree or another, except a Beinoni and a Tzaddik. A sin most difficult to avoid and counted among those sins that people transgresses daily. Remember I told you that we have three sins that everyone transgresses daily. As much as you try, it's very, very difficult. And therefore, a Beinoni can be someone who will not sin, even those sins that as hard as we try, it's very difficult not to sin. This is why Rabbi mistook himself for a Beinoni. Since a Beinoni is innocent, even in neglecting Torah study, a Rabbi could mistakenly consider himself a Beinoni, even though he scrupulously observed even the most minor commandments and never ceased from his studies. Now we can understand. Rabbi says, I'm like a Beinoni. In other words, he wanted to express the idea that a Beinoni is like him, meaning he will never sin. He himself was a tzaddik, he was a righteous man. But he mistakenly said about himself a Beinoni because the difference between a Beinoni and a tzaddik is inside, internally, not externally. The other point I wanted to share, Harry, is that as we will discover, King David was a righteous man. King David was a tzaddik. Yet, if you read in the Bible, King David transgresses many major transgressions. How is it possible that he's a tzaddik then? And the answer is, he was able to repent to such a deep level that it wiped out and cleaned all of his past. Sure.
Every time you sin, you repent.
Yes.
Well, I know that, but I know he did repent, but it was like every single, it was like immediate.
I'm not sure if it was immediately. By the way, by King David, when he sinned with a woman, it took a while. He caused someone to die because he wanted the wife. When the prophet goes to him, it was a while later. It wasn't just overnight. So it's not necessarily immediately. The following in the gray box is an addition that the Rabbi added for a reason. He did not want us to get distracted from the topic, so he put it as in a gray box, but I want to study it because I want to make sure that we all study the whole Tanya. So I'm going to read it, explain it very briefly. As for what is written in Zohar, the third part, page 231, he whose sins are few is classed a righteous man who suffers, implying that even according to the Zohar, the meaning of the righteous man who suffers is one who does sins, albeit few. And if so, Beinoni must be one who is part virtuous and is part sinful. This is the query of Rabbi Nona to Elijah. But according to Elijah's answers there, the meaning of righteous man who suffers is as stated in Ram Emna and Parshat Mishpatim, quoted above, that is, that the righteous man who suffers is one whose evil nature is subservient to his good nature. I'm continuing on the next page. And the Torah has 70 facets, modes of interpretations. I'm going to continue reading, then I'll explain it very briefly. The Rabbi notes that the words and the Torah has 70 facets and helps us understand Rabbi Nona's query. It is difficult to understand how Rabbi Nona would even entertain the notion that a righteous man who suffers is one who actually sins, inasmuch as all the above-mentioned questions clearly lead us to assume that the opposite. Rabbi Nona's query, however, was prompted only by the fact that the Torah has 70 facets, and he thought that this was possibly one of these facets. Let me explain. The Zohar quotes a interaction between a rabbi called Rabbi Nona and Elijah the prophet. Rabbi Nona met Elijah, that's what the Zohar says. Rabbi Nona met Elijah the prophet, and he said to him, when it says a righteous man who suffers, does that mean that he has few sins and he suffered? In other words, Rabbi Nona was asking Elijah the question, most asked question in every community, and that is, how come righteous men sometimes suffer and wicked people flourish and have a good life, right? Many people ask, he's wicked, why is he so successful? And righteous men who do the right thing always get to suffer. Rabbi Nona asked Elijah that question. He says, how come some righteous men suffer and wicked people are successful? And he turned to Elijah and said, perhaps righteous man who suffer is a man who is righteous but has very few sins, and therefore God is punishing him in this universe. Wicked people who flourish is because they have very few good deeds and God wants to get rid of it, so he rewards them in this universe. So when they go up there, they're going to go to hell completely. And Elijah, so we see that a righteous man can be someone with few sins. And Elijah the prophet told him, no, it is impossible, because righteous man has not a single sin. And he told them that the reason that righteous men suffer is just God's secret of running the universe, the DNA of the universe, and he's not sharing it with any human. But the rabbi is asking, how is it possible Rabbi Nona even entertained the idea that a righteous man has few sins? The Rebbe says, because there are 70 facets to the Torah. The Torah, every letter can be interpreted in at least 70 ways. We don't know most of them, but there are ways to interpret every word and every letter in Torah in 70 ways. Says the Rebbe, perhaps Rabbi Nona thought that this is one of the 70 ways, albeit it's very far from reality, yet he thought that perhaps it can be entertained that way. That's all the addition. Now we're going to go back to our discussion. Let me give you an introduction to what we're about to discuss. The rabbi is going to tell us that if you look in Jewish law, we find that righteous man is not complete, perfect human being, but a person whose majority of their deeds are good. And wicked men are not necessarily someone whose deeds are completely evil, but the majority of their deeds are evil. And a Benoni is someone who is half and half. Where do we see it? Maimonides writes Jewish law. It tells us that a human being is judged based on the majority of their behavior. It will have a lot of weight. The same is a city, a town will be judged based on the majority of its inhabitants. Let me explain. According to Maimonides in Jewish law, if I, for example, in my life did 200 sins and 400 mitzvot, so majority of my behavior is good, when God is judging me, I will pay for every sin. I will be rewarded for every mitzvah, every good deed. However, the tone, the severity of the punishment is weighed based on my overall behavior. I think in court of law, it's the same. A judge will punish someone, first offender, majority of his behavior is good. First offender, we give him only probation. Second offender, we make it a little harder. Third offense, we throw the book at him, right? Even though all three behaviors were equally the same. He broke into a bank and had an armed burglary. The first time around, we give him a break. Why? Because we assume that majority of his life is good life. Second time, we already question it. The third time, we say, oh, we're going to go to the extent of the law. We're going to go as far as we can. So therefore, tells us Maimonides, no matter how many sins you do, even if you do not repent and you keep doing good, if your majority is good, those sins that you're going to have to pay back the payback will be much less, as if someone is a wicked man. So there can be, I have the same conditions and someone next to me, and we both sinned. We both entered to a restaurant and ate not kosher. And we all, both have the same background and was as hungry as before, as in the same way. But if I do many mitzvot and that person did less, the punishment will be far less than someone whose majority of the deeds are inappropriate. That's what is we call him in court. He's meritorious. He's a tzaddik. Someone else whose majority of deeds are bad, we call him a wicked person. Therefore, the punishment will be much greater, even though it's the same action. A Beinoni is someone who's half and half. Someone who's an average behavior, one good, one bad, one good, one bad. The punishment will also be accordingly, not as light as a tzaddik, not as harsh as a wicked, will be somewhere in the middle. So we see the idea of Beinoni and tzaddik applied to someone who is not perfect. That's the question the Rabbi is addressing immediately. As for the well-known saying, in page 42, right below the gray box, as for the well-known saying that one whose deeds are misdeeds are equally balanced is called a Beinoni, while he who has a majority of virtues outweighs his sins is called tzaddik. This is only a borrowed name. That is a figurative use of the term borrowed from its true usage in order to emphasize a particular point. Thus, the name Beinoni and tzaddik, denoting balance between merits and sins, are in fact but borrowed names, used in regards to reward and punishment. Why? Because one is judged according to the majority of his deeds, and he is termed righteous in reference to his verdict, since he is acquitted in his trial. It is only in this legal sense that the term tzaddik is applied to one who performed more good deeds than evil. Did everybody understand? Do you understand what borrowed name is? If I tell someone he has a heart like a stone, he has a stoned heart, does it mean that his heart is really made out of stone? If I tell you that my father is bigger than your father, does it mean that my father is taller than your father? It's called figurative description. That's the only way to describe in ways that we can relate. When I say someone has a heart of a stone, or we say someone is an angel, it doesn't mean he got wings and he can fly. There are ways that cannot be expressed unless we use a borrowed term, says the rabbi. Anytime in the legal Jewish system you call someone a Beinoni or you call someone a tzaddik, it's a figurative, borrowed description. It is not the real essence of the person. So when I say someone, you're a tzaddik, my son, I told him, you're a tzaddik. It doesn't mean he did not cheat or lie or misbehave. All I say is today he's pleasing me. Therefore, he's a tzaddik. That's what the description is about. Says the Rebbe, but the real idea of what a tzaddik is someone who is perfect and had never sinned. A Beinoni is someone who is perfect and had never sinned. A wicked man is someone who 99.999% of his behavior is righteous, but one sin, one time he forgot to study Torah for 5 minutes during the day. Boom, he's become a wicked man.
So we all are wicked.
Just a minute. Herman does not explain
Yes,
this
that's
address. We are about to address Sheila's point from last lesson about sitting. Yes, Harry?
I just heard two definitions of the moment. One is that he's perfect, and another thing that says that his good deeds outweigh his bad deeds. Which is it?
So it depends where you, by the way, in Hasidic teaching, it always depends where you're talking about. Have you ever heard from me that the answer is depends where you're talking about? In deep Hasidic teachings, it always, sometimes there's a contradiction and the answer is depends where you're talking about. When it comes to the legal terminology, to determine whether the city is a tzaddik city, city of tzaddikim, or city of wicked men, it's majority of the deeds. And a Beinoni is 50-50. But it is a borrowed term. Just like telling someone who is an angel, you're an angel for washing dishes. You're not having wings. But the real angel is someone with wings, and it has no color and cannot be touched. The real tzaddik is someone who had never before, and based on this state today, as I explained that as Rabbi, we're going to read, I'm sorry, as King David. King David has never seen. What do you mean never seen? Well, by the time he repented, it was such a deep repentance that it wiped out his past. That's a tzaddik. A Beinoni is someone who would never sin before, never sin tomorrow, after the future. Tomorrow he might face a challenge and sin actually, but that does not take away that day he was a Beinoni. Yes, Harry. Okay, you understand? So again, so this is
Politician.
so the first thing we need to understand that when we talk about the 5 categories, more generally 3 categories, wicked, Beinoni, and righteous. There is one category which is a borrowed term, and that is mostly used in the legal terminology. Then you can have someone who has sins, but he's still a tzaddik. We call him a tzaddik. You have someone who has 50% of his behavior is wrong. He's called a Beinoni. In the true definition of a tzaddik, the true definition of a Beinoni is someone who had never sinned, has no record that is inappropriate, had served God all his life, all the time, in every part of his day or body. And that in that way, Beinoni and tzaddik are the same. Now we are going to move on to the next idea is it possible to become a tzaddik? If, however, page 43 on top, if, however, we seek to truly define the distinct qualities and ranks of a tzaddikim and beinonim, our sages have remarked that the righteous are judged, that is, motivated and ruled solely by their good nature, as it is written, and my heart is void with me. We will discover that the heart has 2 components divided into 2 parts, the right side and the left side. The right side contains the godly soul, the left side contains what we call the animal soul. King David says, my heart is hollow because he killed his evil soul. The animal soul, he had killed it through fasting and deepening himself in connecting to God. So therefore, a righteous man not only does not misbehave, does not even have a desire to misbehave. There is no challenge. It's just like you're asking from you to do something that's very difficult and challenging. For some people, unfortunately, I'm going to use an example, drinking or drugs. For people, it's a very strong challenge. And some people who are born with that desire, and unfortunately, we need to help them, of course. But there are some other people that drinking is something so foreign to them, they get a headache and they don't even want to drink. I have parents, thank God, that when they see me say Chaim, they looked at me like, I'm a sugar. Why are you causing yourself so much harm, so much pain? For some people, the idea of drinking, I don't want to go judging, and I don't want to say that one is greater or inferior, God forbid. And it may be politically incorrect, but just for the example, let's stick to the example. Some people are challenged by certain objects, food, behavior, etc., while others not only are not challenged by that, it hurts them. They are pain if you ask them to behave in that way. And that's what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik not only has no desire to eat ice cream, but he says it's not healthy. What for? Just like an animal. Can you offer a sushi to a horse? Can you offer whatever, chocolate to a dog?
I eat it.
It's not healthy. I heard it's not healthy
I
for them.
can go.
It's not healthy. It's poison for them. I was told.
It's so bad.
He survived.
Examples.
The horse will not look for sushi. He will look at you like you're loony. He says, why don't you feed me? This is not good for me. He don't want it. He has no desire and it's not healthy. A righteous man, just like the animals, are programmed to do and act and consume whatever is necessary for their sustenance, for their well-being. A righteous man don't have that challenge. He had gotten rid of that part of life. And therefore, when you offer him something that's not kosher or something that's not healthy, he says, what for? It hurts me. It literally, physically hurts them to be involved in an activity or consumption, etc., of something that's not appropriate for a godly soul. That is what a tzaddik is. Dick, you wanted to say something? You had a question? And that's why King David says that his heart is hollow, because he was able to rid himself by killing the evil desire. David extirpated. Okay.
Is it possible to be born without the desire to do any of these vices? Or
Let's
does it
find
have to
out.
be done through discipline?
Let's find out. David extirpated his evil nature through fasting. Other ways too are possible. We thus see from the Gemara that the definition of a tzaddik in its true sense applies to the person who has rid himself of his evil nature. Not only he does not sin, he has no desire to sin either. But whoever has not attained this degree of ridding himself of his evil nature, even though his virtues outnumber these sins, is not at all at the level of and rank of a tzaddik. Someone who has not gotten rid of his evil and he still has sins, even though there are very few, only one a day out of 1,000 behavior, he's not a tzaddik, he's a wicked man, because he has the evil soul. Otherwise, he wouldn't allow, his body will run away, reject the idea of sin. In fact, not only he has not reached the rank of a tzaddik, he has not yet attained even the level of a Benani, as has been demonstrated above. We studied before. A Benani cannot be someone who sinned even one sin. This is why our sages have expounded the following in Medrash and in Talmud. The Almighty saw that the righteous were few, so he arose and planted, that is, and spread them in every generation. For as it is written, that tzaddik is the foundation of the world. Thus, in each generation, there must be a tzaddik who serves as the foundation of the world. This paucity of tzaddikim, the righteous were few, can be explained only if a tzaddik is he who has totally rid himself of his evil nature. Were the term tzaddik to mean one whose good deeds outweigh the evil, why then do our sages say that the righteous were few, even when the overwhelming majority of Jews have more deeds than evil? The Talmud tells us that God saw that righteous men are very few. So what did he do? There needs to be a tzaddik in every generation. So he spread them around. He did not allow them to be a bunch of them in one generation. Now, the only way to explain the Rabbi is going back to the Talmud, that, in other words, it makes sense. Because if a tzaddik is someone whose majority of deeds are good and can have few sins, then you have plenty of people around. Why God need to spread them around? There must be a tzaddik, must be somebody that was born that way by God and destined for a purpose. And therefore, as Dick asked, if it's possible to reach that level, the answer is, and as we'll discover in great depth, no. Only those that God had desired. In other words, I have a purpose, you have a purpose, each one has a purpose. A righteous man is like the eyes of the body. Can every part of the body be the eyes? No. Why not? Eyes can see, can communicate, can visualize things. The legs, the toenails, they don't have that glory. Not everybody is looking at other people's toenails when they talk to them. They look at their eyes. And the answer is, each one has a purpose. And therefore, one part cannot turn into, in the DNA before they're born, every part of the DNA can turn into a body part. But once it's determined, that's it. This is exactly, we are a human being throughout history and in every generation, as we'll get into many, many details about that relate to it. The point is, must be clarified that a tzaddik is someone who had never seen, will not sin. A tzaddik who has ridden himself from the evil and his heart, the left side of his heart is hollow. This is something we cannot attain on our own, except when God destined someone to become a tzaddik. And I know your question, I assume, I don't know, is about King David. We will address that in a moment. If you let me finish the sentence. So a tzaddik is only when God picked, only one in every generation, and that man is the tzaddik, and no one else can reach. Now we can understand how important it is the Benoni, and the entire book centers about Benoni, because if you want to become a tzaddik, it won't happen. But you can become a Benoni. You can get to a point where you don't sin, period. And that's why it's so powerful. Now, King David was destined from his birth. The fact that he sinned, later on, he was able to reach the point of emptying out and hollowing the evil inclination. In other words, a tzaddik can be born where from day one they're perfect. As we'll discover here, there are many righteous men who are born to very simple people. And I say it in a very simple way. To parents who not only did not raise them properly, but raised them the opposite way. And they knew nothing about Torah, they knew nothing about mitzvot, and their life were not good until a turning point came, and that's when they made the switch. Have you heard of Rabbi Akiva?
Yeah.
The entire Jewish tradition we have is based on is from Rabbi Akiva.
But
Rabbi
meanwhile,
Meir was.
meanwhile, a person can be.
There is no righteous man who lived ever as Rabbi Akiva. Nobody.
But-
Yet his father and mother converted, and until he was 40, he hated scholars. And he used to say, I'm going to rip them apart like an animal, like I do to animals. He was a nobody, he was a mobster. Only at the age of 40, he discovered, and with the help of his wife, Rachel, that's when he started studying for 40 years, and that's when he became who he became. So
But
you,
he sinned, right? He sinned, right?
the first 40 years, right?
So he was a tzaddik who sinned.
The moment that their destiny is to become a tzaddik and serve God in that capacity, that's when they reach that level.
So you can be.
By
a
the way,
sinner, and you can be wicked, and you can give it all up, and you become a Baal Teshuva, you can become a tzaddik.
I just said that God has created someone as a tzaddik, and without that, no one can become a tzaddik.
But
Just
if
a minute,
you
I
were
want to-
one of those and you sin, you can still sin if you were created.
And then become a tzaddik, correct. By the way, there are plenty of stories. I'm using Rabbi Akiva because I assume everybody heard the name. There are plenty of rabbis throughout history that are very holy people, where their starting life were totally very, very far from what a tzaddik is. And yet, when the moment came, the right moment came, they turned around and they become a tzaddik. But the other point is, it's very important to share that in Hasidic teaching, we try not to fool ourselves. You got to know where you stand. You cannot imagine or say, I'm at a certain point and you're not. What the rabbi just did for us is get used to the idea that attaining a level where there is no challenge, there is no test, there is no desire to do evil is something that only God can do, can take away from us. And therefore, if God did not take it away from us, we will have a desire to do evil all the time. No matter how many black hats I wear, no matter how much Torah I study, I have the same evil as everyone else. My goal is to put it under lock and key, under cage, the evil desire. And it can always be opened up and burst out. And people do fail. Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. The Talmud teaches us. It's in the book of Proverbs that a righteous man falls 7 steps before he get up and move 1 step. In other words, it's what we call a stepping stone. You got to go back. If you want to jump very far, what do? You take few steps back. Why? It gives you the oomph, right? Without that, if I stand on one spot and I try jumping, I cannot reach that far unless I go back and I run. The book of Proverbs tells us that a tzaddik, before he moves up one step high, he has to fail 7 steps back. And that's the idea of the Tanya. Don't fool yourself. The challenges are there for every human being. Reaching a certain point will not come easy. Life is about the challenges. That's what a Benoni. We can all be into a point where we control our action. And that's the maximum God is asking from us. The fact that there are some righteous men who has no desire to do evil, do not face that challenge. It is because they have a different destiny and God had placed them in our generation for certain reasons. Maybe later on, as we discover deeper about this human soul, we'll find out why. I don't think it's appropriate right now. But this is the point that the Rabbi has made, that a Benoni is someone who do not sin in action, in life. There is no difference between a Benoni and a tzaddik. To become a tzaddik, it's impossible unless God has destined someone to be a tzaddik. And a Benoni is the maximum, and that's what we should strive for. The fact that you find Benoni half and half in deeds, the fact that you find a tzaddik who is majority of deeds are good, it is in the legal system, and it's a borrowed term. The essence of a tzaddik, the essence of a Benoni is someone who is totally clean, has a clean record, never screamed at his wife, never been late to dinner, never told you not true, a lie, and always ate kosher, and always served God in an appropriate way. Yes, Sheila. Actually, the soul is a feminine. Where do you see? By the way, we're about to talk about the souls. The souls are feminine. We're about to get into a feminine. You're talking about the terminology of tzaddik, Benoni? All right. So there is a rule in dikduk, in grammar, in Hebrew, when you address a crowd of male and female, you use the masculine verb. But it does not, it's not exclusive. It's not just for men. We have many righteous women. In fact, we read in every Friday night that the Eish Israel, we say that the women are above the men. So whatever you attribute to the men, the wife is even greater. That's in Women of Valor. Eshet Chayla Teret Bala. Teret means she's above us. So you have, it's everyone. Yes. Yes. That's part of the Lamed Vav Tzadikim.
You see one, it's 36. No, I'm a little confused.
I had the same question. And Harry's asking.
What was the question?
Harry's asking. The Rabbi is mentioning one tzaddik. However, it's well known that in every generation there must be 36 righteous men. Why 36? I'm not going to get into, but it's a very well documented in Jewish tradition. My answer is this is the way I understand. What the Rabbi is talking about, a minimum of one tzaddik. But there are definitely more, and there should be 36. However, those 36 are hidden righteous men, so you wouldn't be able to tell them. There might be homeless people, there might be drunk people, they might be not Jewish. There might be human beings that we don't even think that they are going to be tzaddik. Do you understand that? Yeah. But the tzaddik, one, as we will talk about it and we'll get to it, there must be one that is a tzaddik, the epitome of perfection.
Is he recognizable?
One should be, yes.
You don't like that.
That's right.
Is the concept of Lamed Vav related to this or not?
That's what we're talking about. Lamed Vavnik. I just want to share one more thing. I saw a program the other day about a child or a very rare genetic, I'm sorry for calling it a defect or anomaly of a person who feels no pain. Anybody heard about that? Mm-hmm. Feel no pain. They say that those people never reach the age of maturity. Even though you would think, oh, no pain, it's great. People can slap you, you can fall, you can break your teeth. No pain, you live a life. Turned out that the pain is not so bad. Actually, one of the greatest senses. Professors call it the sixth sense that we all must possess to survive. People talk about five senses, hearing, seeing, smelling, touching, etc., but they don't talk about the sense of pain, which prevents us from getting into trouble. So there is an I watched an interview with a man who is 32, and scientists say that is a very rare situation because most of them don't make it that late. He said that far. He says that when he started teething, by the time his parents realized, half his tongue was gone. He was biting and eating his tongue when he was teething. There was no pain. He didn't understand. So he says that months and months of his life, he was in a hospital for self-inflicting pain, and not only external causes for pain, it's self-inflicting. He doesn't even realize that there is pain. The door of the car shuts on his fingers. He has no idea. He doesn't think much about it. They say that this is a little anomaly in the brain, one nerve that is missing there, and he has no pain. The problem is, without pain, we will not be able to survive. We will hurt ourselves. Most children who are born that way do not make it very far. This man was, as I said, reached 32. Now they know, they do a lot of studies on him. It's a very fascinating program that I saw. The point that I want to share, and I want to plant that seed as we'll get into details, challenges, the desire to do evil is what keeps us a good, perfect human beings. Taking away that challenge not only makes life boring because you face no challenges. You're always on time, you never cheat, you never raise your voice, you don't drink, you don't eat something that's inappropriate. No, it's the first time I heard it. Huh?
Goody two shoes.
Goody two shoes?
Two shoes.
Okay, so the point is, very good. A perfect human being, very good. So you're right on target. So that's the comparison, someone who has no pain, no sense of pain, where all they do is end up hurting themselves. If we have no desire and no fight, life is perhaps not worth fighting for. And therefore, we always have that desire. We always have that evil pushing us to become a tzaddik. To be a tzaddik is someone who don't have that. And not to have that is only someone who is destined for a specific purpose and specific mission. Let's continue. Now the rabbi is going to go and delve into the details of our discussion. Page 44 in the middle. However, the explanation of the matter, so that we better understand the level of a tzaddik and Beinoni, as well as the various gradations within their ranks, I just want to point out that when I say a tzaddik, there are myriads. Someone asked if there are levels and what's the difference if someone can jump from a Beinoni to a tzaddik. And I think I told you, wait a little bit. There are myriads. There are billions of different levels within a tzaddik. There are billions of levels within a Beinoni. Each one has their own conditions and their own destiny and their own lifestyle. However, they're all in the same category. Is to be found in light of what Rabbi Chaim Vital wrote in Shar Akdusha in Eitz Chaim, Portal 50, Chapter 2. The Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, was the Kabbalist that expanded the Zohar. He lived in the 16th century in Tzfat, in Israel. That's why it's a Kabbalah center. Lecha Dodi is one of his students that wrote Rabbi Moshe Al-Kabatz. And there are many, the Code of Law, Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote the Code of Law in Tzfat, who was a disciple of the Arizal. The Arizal never wrote any book, and he died at a very young age. I believe he died at the age of 32, if I'm not mistaken. And he had one student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, for many students who became very close with him and spent only, I believe, 10 months with him. He came from Egypt to test to see if it's a good fit for him to study Torah. He found it, he fell in love, and the rabbi, the Arizal, says about this young man, he is the one who understands me better than anybody else. Rabbi Chaim Vital is the one who recorded the teaching of the Arizal. So anytime you have recording of the Arizal based on other students, it can be questioned and it needs to be verified. Rabbi Chaim Vital is the only one that we do not need to verify because it is the words of the Arizal. As the Arizal testify, he only spent 10 months with him, yet the lion's share of Arizal teaching come from this rabbi. So Rabbi Chaim Vital says in the Gate of Kedusha that every Jew, whether righteous or wicked, possesses two souls. As it is written, in neshamot, souls, plural, which I have made. The same, a very similar track can be applied to a non-Jew, but we're dealing with a Jew. So a Jewish person, God, when he created a person, he created two souls. Though the verse speaks of an individual Jew, as is indicated by the singular form of the word ruach, spirits, in the preceding phrase, when the spirits of a man, which emanates from me, will be humbled, the plural term souls is nevertheless used, indicating that every Jew possesses two souls. These are two nefashot, two souls and life forces. One soul originates in the klipa and sitra achra. Klipa means a shell or peel. God created forces which conceal the godly life force found in all creation, as a peel covers and conceals a fruit. Sitra achra means the other side, the side of creation that is the antithesis to the holiness and purity. The two terms are generally synonymous. And it is this nefesh which originates in the klipa and sitra achra that is clothed in the blood of a human being, giving life to the body. As it is written, for the nefesh of the flesh, that is the nefesh that sustains physical and corporal life, is in the blood. From this nefesh stem all the evil characteristics deriving from the four evil elements within it. We're going to not get into the four elements. That will be next time in 2 weeks, God willing. But all I'm going to share as we conclude is that every human being is made out of two souls. Those two souls are directly responsible for our life. And we are dealing now the first chapter only with the first soul. It's called the first soul. Why? It enters the body first. The second soul enters at bar or bat mitzvah, start entering at the bris or the naming, and concludes at the bar and bat mitzvah. And even then, it's not fully concluded until the wedding. But that's the second soul, which we'll talk about next time. The first soul, we call it the natural soul. The natural soul is called evil. It's called the other side, meaning the opposite of God, but there is nothing wrong and there is nothing evil per se with that soul. That soul is what derives energy and makes us want to live. It's part of the blood. If you read in the Torah that God forbade us from drinking or eating blood of animals, why? Because the life of the animal is in its blood. Anybody read that? Anybody familiar with that? In other words, the energy to live is in the blood. It's responsible for four categories of evil desire. Let's talk about one more thing. Next week we'll expand, and that is called the shell or peel of the energy. Just like God created shells. The shell, there are 3 types of shells, as we'll discover later on. There is one shell that is edible and even healthier than the fruit itself. Anybody has an example of a peel or a shell that is edible?
Skin of a potato.
Skin of a potato, you eat the skin of, yeah, you can eat it. I would use an example of a pear, apple, right? You can eat it. Then you have another shell that is unedible, but with a little changes, you can enjoy it. And they are an onion, I use the example of an orange. Orange, you know, you can cover it with sugar and it tastes, it's very good. Kiwi, you can eat the shell of a kiwi? No, you cannot. But the third one is dangerous. A shell that's dangerous, anybody knows that is inedible? Coconut, thank you. Coconut, pineapple, walnut, all the nuts. The shell is so hard that is there to protect it from the environment. Without the shell, by the way, the fruit will never be able to get to reach a level of ripe. But for us, the benefit of a shell is only protection, not for using it. The animal soul is like the shell that protects us, that gives us the energy and gives us the ability to live life, as we'll discover next week. And therefore, it is responsible for the 4 categories of misbehaving, 4 categories that includes every misdeed, every misbehaving that a human being can think of. And Sheila, you had a question?
Yeah, earlier you talked in the past that the first soul is selected by God and is looking at everyone. The second soul you're talking about, you said is later life, is that also God selected?
Correct. Both souls are chosen by God. However, the parents have the ability to perfect or to make it much easier on the child when it comes to the souls. At the end of chapter 2, we'll discuss it. We'll get this. Tanya will cover so many topics that will be very, very fascinating, as I'm enjoying myself the study of Tanya. So thank you very much, Shana Tova to everybody. We'll see you, God willing, in 2 weeks. Be well.